My name is Patrick. So glad to see you here this morning as we wrap up our series Icon, the empowering invitation of the cross. The reality is, though, it's not just one invitation, it's actually multiple invitations. And it's multiple invitations, and they get progressive, and so it starts out easy and simple and things, but eventually it gets to hard and difficult and more commitment and more sacrifice and things. But it all starts with something easy. It all starts from Jesus' invitation for people to come and see. That's where Jesus started his invitation to anyone and everyone. Didn't matter what they believe. It didn't matter what their lifestyle was. It was just an invitation from Jesus to people to just come and see. Come and see who he is, what he taught, how he lived his life, all of those things. It was an invitation to come and see. And that's why we kind of do things the way we do around here, is because we want this church to be a come and see church. This is a church where you can feel comfortable coming and seeing and figuring out who Jesus is. And so this is a judgment-free zone. This is a any question goes zone. That's what we're trying to do here, is establish that kind of environment where you can, no matter what you believe, no matter what your lifestyle is, you can just come and feel comfortable and safe and come and see and figure out who Jesus is and explore and ask questions and do research and all of these things to figure out who Jesus is. So his first invitation to anyone and everyone is just to come and see. And at some point after that, there's the invitation of the cross itself. It's the invitation Jesus gives from the cross, through the cross, by the cross, for the cross. It's all of that. And it's the idea that as he hung there on the cross, that he was dying in our place. That as he hung there, he took on our shame and our condemnation and our sin and our guilt and our punishment. And he took on all of that for us. And for those of us who put our faith and trust in what he did for us, then through that, the invitation is, come and trust me with your salvation. And if you do that, you will receive forgiveness. That's the invitation of the cross itself. But beyond that, there's many, many more invitations, and we'll get back to that in a moment. But between this idea of come and see and the actual invitation to receive salvation, to receive that forgiveness, the invitation in between all of that is from Jesus is to come and test me. Come and try me out. See if the things I'm teaching are actually good. You can do it and try it for yourself to see if what I'm teaching actually works. And so you can pick and choose, and I'll try that, and I don't want to try that, and that's okay if you're in that come and see phase. But for those of us who've put our faith and trust in what Jesus has done, this idea beyond that, this idea of following him beyond that, and as a result of that, well, there's not this idea of picking and choosing. I mean, we still have a choice if we're going to accept the invitations that Jesus has for us, and we'll get to those in a minute, but it's not a pick and choose kind of thing. But for those of us who've done that, we've decided to follow him. We've found that our lives are actually better because we're following Jesus. It's made us better at life. It doesn't mean things are rosy. It doesn't mean everything is great. We still have issues. We still have problems. We still have hard times. But it's made us better at life. It's made us better people. It's made us better spouses, better parents, better co-workers, better friends. It's just made us better at life. And so if you're here today and you would define yourself as in that come and see phase, you're here today and you're not a Christian and you're just still trying to figure out who Jesus is or what the church is all about, I am so glad that you're here today. We kind of built this idea of church for people like you so you could come and have that space to explore who Jesus is. So hopefully you'll feel comfortable and learn a bit more about who Jesus is today. And if you have questions, we'd love to have a conversation with you about your questions so that we might be able to help you explore who Jesus is. But this idea of once you accept Jesus, then there's the rest of your life you're following Jesus and continuing to take steps toward following him. And it's one of progression, and it's step after step after step. But I was reading this book by Kyle Idleman. He's a pastor in Kentucky, and he wrote a book called Not a Fan. And he says this idea of being a fan of Jesus has actually crept into the church. Because it's come and see. It's come and see, and there's this idea that you can come and see Jesus. And so on some respect, there's this idea of I'm a fan of Jesus, but then once you decide to receive forgiveness, he says we haven't let go of that fandom. And instead of following Jesus, we're still a fan of Jesus. And in his book, he got from a dictionary, he defined fan this way. He said, it's an enthusiastic admirer. He says, when we come and see and we just kind of get comfortable and we're sitting there and it's like we're becoming a fan of Jesus, which initially is fine if you're in that come and see phase. But he says, once you receive forgiveness, once you put your trust in him, well then we're to follow him, not just be a fan. And so I began to think, okay, well, what is a fan? What does a fan do? What does a fan of a team look like? And so I came up with a few things. One thing is a fan attends games. Whether you're watching on TV or whether you're there in person live, a fan attends some games. And then a fan wears team apparel. You know, you got your hoodie or your jersey or your beanie or whatever. And then a fan, depending on your fandom, some fans know more things than others. But a fan knows the team record, some names of the players, and some stats, right? And some people know more stats than others and that kind of thing. Some people know more names than others. But that's pretty much what a fan is. But a fan just knows the players' names. Most likely, most fans don't actually know the players. Right? They don't know them personally. They don't have a relationship with them, a friendship with them. I mean, they may follow them on Instagram, but they're not friends. And so I began to think, okay, well, if that's what a fan is, well, what about church? What does that look like for us? And so this is what I came up with. A fan attends church. A fan wears church merch. And a fan knows some things about Jesus. But just like the fan of a team, they don't really know Jesus. They don't have a relationship with him. And none of these things are wrong. It's not wrong to attend church or wear church merch or know some things about Jesus. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But if that's where we stay, Jesus says, I'm inviting you to more. I'm inviting you into more. And I don't want you to stay a fan. I want you to get out of the stands and into the game. And that's the invitation of Jesus. And we've been wrapping all of this around this idea of this one verse where Jesus says, whoever wants to be my disciple, whoever wants to be a Christian, whoever wants to follow me, whoever wants to be on my team must deny themselves. Scotty talked about that. And take up their cross daily. That was last week. And follow me. That's this week. Let me ask you this. Deny themselves and take up their cross daily. Does that sound like a fan to you? I mean, I don't think that sounds like a fan of a team to me. I mean, a fan of a team, they go and they're gorging themselves on whatever they want to eat, right? There's no denying yourself there. And you're drinking whatever you want to drink, and you're yelling whatever you want to yell. There's no denying self when you're just a fan. The invitation of Jesus is to more and more and more. More closely, more commitment, more sacrifice, more denying self, and even to the point of taking up your cross daily. That's the invitation of Jesus to follow. The interesting thing about Jesus is when he gave these invitations to follow him, when he extended these invitations, there were people who didn't want to leave behind what they were involved in. They didn't want to give up certain things. For a guy named Nicodemus, he didn't want to give up his religious reputation. And so he struggled with doing that and following Jesus. A guy who is termed the rich young ruler, this young guy who had all this wealth, he didn't want to give up his wealth. And so he decided, instead of following Jesus, instead of living the life that Jesus would have him to live, he decided he was going to enjoy his wealth and live for his wealth. There were other times where Jesus invited people to follow him and they didn't want to give up their relationships, certain relationships that they had on this earth. So there were times where Jesus extends the invitation to follow. And so many people decided to go a different way. So many people decided there was something from their past or something in their current situation where they didn't want to give up. And so to help us understand, what do we do when we're faced with that? What do we do when we're dealing with something that we don't want to give up? We're following Jesus and we're feeling this invitation to more. We're hearing this invitation of Jesus to take another step and to be more and to do more and to sacrifice more and to all of that, commit more. What do you do when we're not wanting to give something up? I want to go back to a story that happened before Jesus came to this earth. And in it, I think it helps us to understand what it means and how to give up those things we don't want to give up. This is a story about a guy named Elijah. And Elijah was a prophet of God, which meant that he would go and God would speak to him about something, and then he would go and tell people. Sometimes it would be individuals, sometimes it would be groups of people, but God would speak to people through a prophet. And so Elijah at this particular time is a prophet, and God has told Elijah, hey, the guy who's going to succeed you, your time is coming to an end, but the guy who's going to take over after you, his name is Elisha, and I want you to go and anoint him to do that. And so Elijah went from there, from having that conversation with God about all of that, he went from there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. So this guy is rich. He's wealthy. He's successful farmer, right? And so just picture that in terms of that day and time. And so here he is. He's this successful, rich, wealthy farmer. And Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him. Now, that was just symbolic thing of Elijah's way of calling Elisha to take over for him. That was what the cloak going around him was. Well, apparently, Elijah just goes up, throws the cloak around him, and then just takes off walking. Like, off he goes. And so Elisha then left his oxen and ran after Elijah. Like, hey, wait up, dude. So he says, let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, he said, and then I will come with you. Go back, Elijah replied. What have I done to you? So Elisha here has this dilemma. He has this decision to make. Is he going to continue with his successful business of being a farmer? I mean, he's got it going on. He's comfortable. He's wealthy. He wants for nothing. Is he going to continue with that? The life he's built? Or is he going to step into the life God is inviting him into? And you know, each and every one of us, eventually at some point come to that crossroads. Are we going to continue with the life we've built? Are we going to continue with the things we're doing and sometimes it's success and sometimes it's not, but are we going to continue with what we're doing, or are we going to step into the life Jesus is inviting us into? Now that doesn't mean necessarily we all have to quit our jobs and do all of that. I'm not suggesting that. But what I am suggesting is that at some point we all have a decision to make. So Elisha left him and went back. He took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he set out to follow Elijah and became his servant. He decided that he would give up all that he had, all that he worked for, all that he had built. He decided to give that up in order to follow God, in order to accept the invitation of God to follow him, to be on the team. And each and every one of us have that decision to make. And Elisha knew that he needed to burn all of his stuff because that was plan B. Okay? Plan B was, okay, if I say yes and I go with Elijah and things don't work out or things get tough, I can always go back and do farming again. But he knew that would not work, because he knew at the moment that something got difficult, he would go back. And so he had to burn plan B. And I wonder if there's something in your past that's holding you back, that you're holding on to, that you're unwilling to let go of in order to follow the invitation of Jesus. You see, for most of us, when we think things to let go of from our past, we think of failures, we think of bitterness and unforgiveness and addiction and bad habits, and we think of all of those things, which all of those things are absolutely true, and they fit into that category. So if there's any of that you're needing to let go of, that you're needing to burn, if you will, maybe God is speaking to you about that today. But for Elisha, it wasn't any of that. It wasn't anything negative. It wasn't anything bad. What Elisha had to burn was success. And many of us don't think of success in that manner. Now that doesn't mean we all have to go, quit our jobs and work for a Christian organization the rest of our life. I'm not saying that. But is there anything that you're holding on to, that you're unwilling to let go of, that you're unwilling to burn, if you will, that's keeping you from following Jesus, accepting the invitation that he has for you to follow him? Basically, what Elisha was saying was this: there's nothing in my past that matters more to me than the future you have for me. There's nothing. Success, none of that success is more important to me than the future you have for me. My kids are not more important to me than the future you have for me. My job is not more important to me than the future you have for me. My reputation, my habit, my hobby, my addiction, my whatever it is, none of that is more important to me than the future you have for me. If we would all do that, if we would all say with Elisha that's how we step into and accept the invitation of Jesus to follow him. current Lakers coach, J.J. Redick, when he was a senior at Duke University. He walks into the weight room one day and he sees two freshmen lifting weights, and they both have on T-shirts from their high school days, which for us, it sounds like no big deal. But for J.J. Redick at the time, he just goes ballistic on these two freshmen. Because they were not dressed in Duke shirts. Because now they were on the team. And now when you're on the team, you can't be wearing another team's things, even if it was from your high school days. And basically, if I can frame what he was saying in terms of what we're saying today, and I'll clean up the language a little bit. He was saying, okay, when you were on your old team, when you were in high school, you may have admired us as a Duke program. You may have been a fan of us. He's like, but now it's different. Now you're no longer a fan, you're part of the team. And so things are different now. And I think that's what Jesus is saying to you and to me. He's saying, when I invite you to come and see, and I invite you to test me and try me and experiment and research and explore, absolutely. I'm inviting you, if you enjoy that and like that, I'm inviting you to be a fan of mine. That is perfectly fine. And if you're in that category today, that is perfectly fine. But what Jesus is saying is, once you step across that line of faith, once you receive that forgiveness, the rest of your life is an invitation to follow. And it's an invitation to live out the fact that you've been forgiven. And it's an invitation to more and more and more. And it's more steps, and it's more commitment, and it's a closer relationship with me. And eventually it's going to mean denying yourself, and eventually it's going to mean taking up your cross daily. And so are you in or not? That's my invitation to you. And my invitation to you is for you to do that, but I'll let you know in the end it's worth it, but you can't be holding on to your past, whether it was a good past or a bad past, or whether it's just one thing from your past. You can't be holding on to any of that. You got to burn it with a match and let's go. That's the invitation of Jesus. The invitation of the cross that we've been talking about in this series. It's not just one invitation. It's a series of invitations, and it's progressive, and it gets harder, but you're closer to Jesus in that, and you're taking steps to following Him. And so I'd like to encourage you today, if there's anything you're holding on to, if there's anything that's keeping you from following Him, would you just symbolically burn it and accept His invitation to follow Him? Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for your love, your grace, your mercy, your forgiveness through Jesus. God, I pray that if there's anything we're holding on to, if there's anything keeping us from following you, God, may you give us the wisdom to understand what that is, God, and then the courage to just burn it, that we might follow you and live the life that you would have us to live. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.